live in South Carolina. I'm currently in West Columbia, South Carolina, which is right across the river from Columbia, the state capital. I've been down here now about 2 years. Um, I homeschooled back in the 90s before the video courses were available. And so I was a classroom teacher before that, and I used some BJU Press materials then because they weren't all written at that time. And so I just had 2 or 3 subjects that I was able to use because they were in the middle of producing all those. So I got things as they had them. And then I did homeschool. I have 3 children. They're all in their 30s now. And I just had my 10th grandbaby last Saturday. And so my one daughter that has 5, she's homeschooling 4 this year. And so I still stay pretty close to homeschooling that way, as well as being the consultant. I did work at BJU Press for 18 years, helping to write elementary materials. So that's something. BJU Press has been near and dear to my heart for many, many years. I want to talk to you today about how you can make your learning fun and educational too. A lot of times we think, oh, the drudgery of getting through the lessons, getting through watching the course if you're using the online, or just the teacher if you're doing the parent-led, just getting through that lesson every day and getting the worksheets done or the pages done. And it becomes a drudgery, and you really need to incorporate and bring some fun back into your schooling. And if you're using the distance learning, there's a lot of fun that's already built into those, but a lot of times your children are just watching all that, and you need to bring that into your home, into your classroom, for your children to actually experience those hands-on things as well. We do have, God gave us senses to be able, and that's how we learn, is through our senses. We see, we hear, we smell, taste, and we touch. And those are all ways that we learn. And children all learn differently. I myself prefer to be I'm more of a hands-on learner. My listening skills are not as great. My younger daughter has auditory processing problems, and I probably have similar problems as well. I do better I write a lot of notes. I'm a visual learner, and I'm a hands-on learner. So, but you have those auditory learners, or those that like to listen to things. They probably do better with the video lessons. They do well with verbally reciting things. And sometimes they might even need to have background noise playing, or white noise, or something like that. When I homeschooled, I had a radio playing in the next room just to give a little bit of background noise, so it wasn't quite as disruptive with each of the children, teaching them their different lessons. Some kids need to have a quiet place. If they're an auditory learner, they might even, because they might hear everything around them. And so those types of things. A hands-on learner, if you've been using BJU Press materials, you know that we do a lot of hands-on in the lessons, and we really promote doing hands-on things. These are children that they engage best by doing things by touching, and they might have a hard time sitting still and actually being still while they're studying. My older daughter, if you ever look, she was an AB student all the way through, but if you looked at her notes, she doodled all around the edges. And some teachers frown on that. Some parents don't like to see their kids do anything. They want their papers to be nice. But some kids have to have that physical hands moving distraction to be able to help them to pay attention. Writing down information can be helpful for a hands-on. It keeps their hands busy. And then those visual learners are those that understand best by seeing things. They like to watch a demonstration. They do well with reading, and they might get impatient if they have to listen to a long explanation. So those are things to keep in mind with your kids as they're learning and as you're teaching them. Whenever you're thinking about doing activities, you think, oh, there's so much preparation work to it. And so there's some of that, and you know your child, you know their strengths and how they learn best. And so and that's another great thing with our materials is we give you a lot of options. I know last week someone mentioned that it's like a smorgasbord, and you can pick and choose what works best with your kids, and that's why this material works so well with so many different children and their different learning styles. But as you're looking at doing these, you want to make sure that you're choosing activities that teach and reinforce concepts. You don't want to waste, your time is precious, and you don't want to waste that precious time by doing an activity that is fun, but it doesn't really have an educational purpose. That is wasting your time and wasting your materials. You want to be able to connect what they're doing back to their schoolwork and what they're actually learning. A good example of that is the wonderful volcano experiment that everybody loves to do. But what are you actually learning about a volcano by doing that? It's a chemical reaction, so it really should be in the chemistry type chapter rather than an earth science chapter. But whenever we put that in the 6th grade activity in the first chapter there, we had them use it as a model to make a model of a type of volcano, and then they can do the eruption. But they're actually connecting that to the purpose of, because they've learned about the shield volcano and the cones and just all the different types of volcanoes that way. And so that you want to be able to connect that to that. You want to be able to schedule your activities and to try to figure out when you're actually going to do them. Even if you do one activity per chapter, like in your science, heritage studies has several activities per chapter. And then also, a lot of times a small activity is done as an introduction to a lesson. And so that can be in any of the subjects. There might be an introduction to a lesson that it's just a small hands-on thing. Like if you're learning about the layers of the earth, if you cut an apple in half, you see the skin, and then you see the core that looks like a little star if you cut it in half that direction. So that reinforces the idea of the core, the mantle, and the crust. And so just something small like that, just to help your child have a hands-on to understand how those layers rather than just a flat diagram. There's a lot of things in our teacher's editions that can help you, even if you use the online courses, the video courses, that you have access to those teacher's editions. And sometimes if your child is not understanding or needs a little help, look in those teacher's editions and see if there might be something in those lessons or in that chapter or whatever to be able to help you. Another great way to find resources is through our resources page online. And we have, I don't know if this is going to show up the right direction. I might have it flipped. But we have on every subject on our BJU Press Homeschool website. It's bjupresshomeschool.com/content/resources. And if you get into there, every textbook has a resource page that has web links. And especially the science and heritage studies have a lot of additional activities in there and places you can go to look for activities and things you can do hands-on. I wanted to show you a few things to be able to, the very first time I did remember doing something hands-on was actually in college. And I always wondered with fractions, if you're wondering if you have multiplying fractions, why did the numbers get bigger and the pieces were smaller? That never made sense to me until my teacher in teaching math taught us so like if I have 1/2 times 1/3, it's 1/2. You can also say it as 1/2 of 1/3. And so you have a piece of paper divided in thirds. So I have a third here, then divide it in half again. And let me write this real quick here. And rearrange things on the table here so I don't have something. Let me get it real quick here. I don't know if you can see the color yellow or not, but so I had my 1/3, and then I have half of that. So actually I have a 1/6. So there's 6 pieces. And so just seeing that got smaller, the light bulb went on. And it's like, oh, now I understand why the pieces are smaller when you're multiplying, because when you're multiplying whole numbers, everything gets bigger, you get more. Well, here we have more pieces, but they get smaller. And so that was just a concept, a hands-on thing that I had, that it was a light bulb moment for me in math with the fractions. But when you're getting back to trying to get some of your materials together, one thing you can do, I had a mom tell me this several years ago, that she takes the little materials lists and staples them to a paper bag, and then have the kids go on a scavenger hunt in the house. That would be a good rainy day activity that you could plan for a chapter or just for a week or whatever. Whatever classes you're talking about, whatever subjects, if it's things that you don't already have in your classroom, go ahead and let your kids do a scavenger hunt and find the things that you need to get around the house that can go in there, and then help your kids have responsibility of organizing and doing handling those materials, keeping them organized and all of that. But I know you want some ideas. I know with math, another thing is all those manipulatives. I didn't have those when I homeschooled. I did mostly first edition things, and there weren't all the materials available and resources that BJU Press has these days. And so I always have, but I had fraction kit. I had little sheep that were the multicolor shapes, but you can use those, and then go ahead and whenever in the math, they show you how to make the different mats and things. But you can do these on file folders as well for ones and tens, and you can work out your math problem and work on your renaming and doing those with your shapes. You can have number lines where you're learning to count by threes or something like that, and have them do that on a number line. But a lot of those things are provided in those manipulative packets, so you've got all those to be able to use. In spelling, most of the elementary spelling lessons the first lesson is a word sort, and those are things that most of the spelling for each lesson is following the spelling pattern for a certain sound, a certain phoneme. And so you can do those word sorts. Some kids, it's like they might write them in the wrong quality. You want them to practice first before they write it. If your kids are struggling, you can set them up on a file folder. So this is an aw sound. So in AW, the ALK, the ALL, and the O. And then you write all the words on sticky notes. They can write the sticky notes. An older child can write the sticky notes, whatever. And then they can sit and sort them and do it more as a game. And then once they have that all sorted, then go ahead and you can check it and let them write them in the book. And then keep your file folder. You can, on the tab, you can put whatever phoneme sound that is, or whatever week or whatever, and then have these for each week, and they can pull these out and review them. If you're working with another child and that child has some time that they need some seat work type thing to do, go ahead and pull some of these out. Let them sit there and sort the words as practice. You can take these in the car. A lot of file folders, the first edition books at BJU Press had a lot of file folder games. And those are things that you can make and do and take with you. You can do that for math review. You can let your child make a game board on a file folder, and then use flashcards or whatever for the pieces and markers, and play a board game to review their math facts. And you can have kids on different math skills. You can have, the younger child is maybe doing addition and subtraction facts. An older child is doing the multiplication facts. They can have their own set of cards and still be playing the same game. And so things like that, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Songs is a good way of remembering. I know for myself, hymns come to mind in times of difficulty, as well as scripture verses, things like that. But a lot of times a thought will trigger a phrase from a hymn, and that comes to mind. The same way with your kids with learning. There's those phonics songs. A lot of the early elementary have songs that are included with the program. So you really want to have them you know, sing those songs at home. Don't just have them listen to them on the video, but go ahead and encourage them to be singing those songs and help them. Science, we have some songs in science. There's songs in some of the heritage studies. There's songs in the different subjects. I think even math and English have songs in them. And a lot of them are done to your more of your nursery rhyme type tunes, like Row, Row, Row Your Boat or London Bridge or something like that. They're tunes that are familiar, and that we've just added words to help them remember a certain concept. And so singing and doing those rhymes, things like that, to really help them to be able to remember. So those are another idea. One thing that I know a lot of kids, I don't know a lot of kids that really enjoy doing book reports, but I know with the reading, as they're revising that, I think they're adding a lot more ideas and ways of creative ways of doing a book report rather than just writing everything down. And that's one thing to remember when you're doing these activities is think about what is the purpose? What is the objective? Why do I want my child to do that activity? So when you think of a book report, is it to have a finished 3-paragraph paper, or is it to be able to analyze a story or a book? And so one way of doing that is with a cereal box. This is one that my daughter did, and so it's been around quite a while. She is 33 now. Anyway, I've managed to hang on to this. When we moved a couple years ago, I came across it, and it's like, oh yes, I can use that now in my workshops. But she has her title of the book, the author, and then for her ingredients, she just listed the characters in the story. And then she has the setting and the plot and the climax. So she has those literary elements there, as well as then she has her nutrients on this side. These are a couple of takeaways, like do not try to hide things from your friends and do not steal because your sin will find you out. So those were a couple of principles that she took away with her. But she also, on the back, she also had a game, and she even had a toy inside, which was a hockey puck, which I guess now, that was back in the 90s, so they don't really have toys as much inside cereal boxes. But she just had a short little, it was more of an oral report where she showed her cereal box. She just had her main notes here of what she was going to tell orally. So she never really had to have a fully composed paper. And that's one thing, is looking at the activities and thinking, what is my child supposed to learn? Can I adapt that? Can I do it differently depending on what their learning style is? Another thing with writing seems to be one of the more difficult areas of the elementary rather than the writing and the grammar. But if they have to write a story, sometimes just coming up with an idea. Our English does have a lot of structured help in trying to help the kids with that. But if you want them just to write a fun story, find fun pictures. I really love, these are, Gary Patterson has very funny calendars and drawings. And so things like this, which you could have your child look at choose from several pictures and say, okay, what happened before this? What is happening right now? And maybe what happened after? And there you've got 3 paragraphs. And it's a fun way of getting them to share ideas and to think about things and to be able to get it down on paper, even if they have to dictate it to you or whatever. But having fun pictures sometimes can help, and have them write about those instead of writing about the thing that they're supposed to be writing about. It could be a sequence of events. If you're going to have to do something in order, instead of writing directions, maybe have them do a sequence of what happened during this story. And so you can adapt your lessons to fit what your child needs to be doing. And another idea for heritage studies, you can have every chapter in heritage studies deals with a time period, and make a paper timeline. And for that time period, I folded this up. I put the date range on here. And then you can have your child work on this throughout the chapter and write down important key events or things that happened, or what, if something was discovered during a certain time period, or there was a war, or something happened in the life, a certain person was, something happened during that time period. And then you can keep these filed and then pull them out and have them review them, have them tell about it, and then they can see what all they've been learning about all year. It could be a good review at the end of the chapter as well, another element of reviewing. And so these are things that, that's something just really simple. This is poster board paper, but you could do it on construction paper or any type of paper. But having that hands-on, doing that, drawing pictures as well as writing, that all helps with that. Something else, science is full of activities, and there's a lot of hands-on with that. Some of the activities, there's variations. I'll get to that in just a minute. But this is one thing that's just, it was a little side thing in the teacher's edition. It's not a regular experiment, but this is a chocolate chip cookie and a toothpick. That's all you need. You could probably do it with an oatmeal raisin cookie too, but it needs to have chunks in it. And so anyway, they chip away. This one was actually in a rocks and minerals chapter, but it's where they were talking about mining and digging out the ore and the minerals, and to where they're going to have to chip away the cookie with the toothpick and get the chocolate chips out and try to keep the chocolate chips whole and intact. And that's what you want them to try to do. You could also do this in the heritage studies when they're talking about archaeology and having to dig up artifacts, or in science with the dinosaurs and they, how they're digging up artifacts that way. But this is just a simple, easy activity to do. It'll take a little bit of time and then they can eat it. And that's one thing. I know a friend of mine, as often as possible, they do edible projects. If they have to do a model or something, an activity or something, they try to do it with edible materials. That way the kids have done it, they can take pictures, they can eat it, and then it's gone. They don't have any storage problems and deciding, when do I throw this thing away? One example, I have this photograph. I don't think you can see it really well. I had it online. I was trying to get the pictures. But this was the cell model back in, these are both animal cells in that particular chapter. But this one is done with a cake. They actually did it. She was going to do cookies and they ended up doing a layer cake. So it's decorated with fruit strips and frosting and different candies and things to show the parts of the cell. This one, you can't see it real well, but it's actually a foam ball that had a section cut out of it, a wedge cut out, and they used Play-Doh to make the different structures inside the cell. And so there's different ways you can use different materials to make your cell and your models, and down to where my last, a couple other things, just random ideas. If you need cardboard, one of my favorite things to use for cardboard is a cereal box. A cereal box is thin. It's like stiffer than poster board, but it's thin enough to be able to cut with scissors, and it holds its shape really well. It's easy to fold and to glue. So that's something that if you ever need cardboard for something, use a cereal box. That's just a little bonus tip there. But I mentioned if in a comment earlier that I was going to show you something for COVID-19. We, in the eastern United States, I don't know if the whole United States, I didn't research to see, we have sweet gum trees with these lovely seeds, that seed pods that come out. And right now, this time of year, they are all over the ground. And I was seeing those and thinking about this and comparing it to a COVID-19 molecule that you see online. These pictures, every time it's on the news, you see a picture, and actually the one our news uses is actually this picture. There's a lot of them with different colors and things. So anyway, I used this as my idea, and then I got a styrofoam plate, and I used those sweet gum balls. I spray painted them red. It's kind of hard to see them red here, but I spray painted them red, and then I have some of the little orange dots, and there's even some yellow. These are pipe cleaners that I poked into the foam plate. And one thing about doing a model, that's a good example of more of you can do it as an assessment. Have your child make the model and then talk about it. Like this model, actually, those things are each a different type of protein, which I didn't know until I researched it for making this model. And so this is something tying current events into your science. Here, Science 6 has a immune system. I was trying to think of what body system it was. It has an immune system chapter in it, which is great for this time of year. And if you have a 6th grade book, and if you didn't get that far with one of your children and you still have that book, maybe pull it out and look at how your immune system works. But anyway, this talks about the different proteins that make it up and what each one is labeled. But you want your child to make sure that they label their model, and then they can explain it to you. Explaining and reteaching is one of the best assessments you can have your child do. And then you can even guide the explanation by asking questions. And it's like, well, tell me about the yellow, or tell me about the red, tell me about the yellow, if your child doesn't know how to start explaining. But tying current events in with your, like the flooding in Michigan, tie that in with your learning, and try to make it interesting, and help your children also by using your current events. It helps your child realize that what they are learning has a purpose and a greater use for them other than just getting through the book that day. They can use that farther on in their life, and it does relate to the real world. I don't know if you have any questions about that. I'll be paying attention later. If there's any comments in there, I'll probably get in there and maybe answer some of those. But I hope some of this has been helpful and encouraging to you, that you can be able to get out there and go ahead and have your kids do some hands-on things. Let them sing songs. Let them experience things in a different way than just writing it down on a worksheet or on a test, or in that way. And I hope you have a good day, and thank you very much.